Hey, I totally forgot about this. Sorry.
Hey, that's okay. If I'm still coding, but now that you're here, I can look at starting up the event at the very least.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I should have like gotten a reminder for myself or something.
Sometimes that dev brain gets ahead of you.
Well, I get hyper focused on something, and so like I'm like immersed in the code, and the whole world drops away. So I don't even like.
Yeah, no, I can understand. Let's.
What's he making? A leaderboard?
I
I actually
believe
want that
so.
code because I'm making a bunch of tables right now, and seeing how to organize them properly would be nice.
Ah,
Pain in the
very
ass
much
to be
so.
doing stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a minor that basically does a matrix multiplication really. So it just does this. So I think I got this here. Nope. Almost. There you go. So nice. So I have this like basically it's querying like this is the validator here. So it's basically getting the sample, which is essentially I'll make this nicer. But it's like just two random like square matrices, and it's just multiplying on the local side and getting a local response, and then multiplying it on the doing it on the remote side, and then it's comparing the like I don't know the distance like
Yeah,
the
the
and
semantic similarity.
yeah it's just an L2 distance here. You know, literally just do this.
Oh yeah, just the L2 distance. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then so if I here's a minor, this is pretty cool. So if I do like test plot, so like basically the minor test plot, it'll like it should show oh you hear like the operations per second on my MacBook using bare metal stuff. So it gets up to a trillion a second, but it's like basically the idea is like basically if you can like do simple matrix operations through like HTTP, then you could basically do any form of like neural network or yeah, it's basically it's just on the matrix level, so you can essentially represent anything like
Yeah,
any
so
neural network you can represent.
you just run multiple matrix calculation requests into
Yeah,
your
so
and
so
reconstruct
if I
them.
want to do like a fleet of them, n equals like 30 or something, and there we go. They're all there, or they're mostly they're doing it asynchronously. Yeah. So now if I do server, and if I do run epoch, and then the validator would be oh, I think I already run. Let's see, max runners. Yeah. So yeah, they all seem to execute.
Mm.
I think it's because Turbo seems one now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you good for us to start talking about the
Yeah.
proposal, fam, and whatnot, and we sort of take over a
Sure.
little bit here?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, Thank you. Let me just trigger the event so that everybody who was interested can hop along. And so one of the main reasons that we wanted to do this in the voice channel as opposed to the stage is just so that everybody else would sort of have a chance to voice any questions that they had themselves. So it wouldn't necessarily just have to sort of be like an ask and answer, and you'd have to type it out. You'd actually get the opportunity to engage, as it were. So feel free to sort of pop in and communicate anything as we're talking. But for those of you who haven't seen the proposal itself or need a refresher, I'm dropping a link inside of the voice chat channel And so this was the proposal. This is sort of a proposal, I believe, Bako, that builds on top of the global stake model.
Yeah, so and it's just like a preliminary like set of ideas. I think I'm reworking the proposal because there's too many items in there, and I think it's like trying to pass too many things at once in a proposal. I think is probably bad for the community, and I think that
Mm,
breaking it apart would make more sense. But the primary key thing in this is the uh having a proof of stake model, at least partially, like a hybrid between proof of stake and proof of work. So subnets
mm.
can still do their things, but then subnet 0 has a proof of stake model, and then that way it incentivizes uh, well, staking to subnet 0 and will lock money into the economy and help in the long run. So
Okay, yeah, so it's sort of like a stability, but also looking to improve on like the longevity, realistically.
yeah, so I've been trying to think of game mechanics and game theory
Mm,
uh, to optimize systems so that we are able to use the natural tendencies of people and sort of the natural like arrival of greed and like sort of perverse incentives
mm.
to actually reinforce the system.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So the way that this one works and is and it's like it's been used lots of other places and stuff. I'm not like claiming I invented it, but
Mm,
basically is that because mining would be predicated on how much you have staked, the incentive is that people want the money from the mining, so they'll stake more than the lowest person on the ladder, knocking them off, and that will continue to happen. And as they leapfrog over each other, the floor to mine keeps going up and up, and that will effectively lock that money into the economy because
they
as long as
won't
there's
want to
emissions,
remove
there
it.
will be miners. So
Mm. Okay. Do you not think that there's a potential like backlash of making mining less accessible because of it?
it does make mining less accessible. So that's why I like the idea of having the hybrid model so that the subnets can offer alternative methods. So
Mm.
they will still be able to like have like Eden, for example, is pretty easy to mine on.
Yeah.
And so like that will still be available, and the rewards shouldn't change too much. Like the distribution of rewards don't really change. It just kind of changes like the APY validator kind of system. So like instead of having like one giant whale, it'd be more like people trying to get mining going and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, so this will be sort of like a new set of parameters that people could apply to their subnet if they chose to, but it wouldn't necessarily be fully enforced across the network.
Well, it would be like everything would be global stake, right? So
Hmm.
it would just basically be across the subnet 0 and for the modules that are hosted there, and then the uh, for the everywhere else, like when you have your own subnet and you have your own sets of miners and stuff, like that's
Yeah.
going to be handled sort of externally and independently by the subnets.
Okay.
So it would be across the subnet 0, I suppose.
Okay, so the majority of these changes, or all of them, are specifically targeted at subnet 0?
Yeah. So this is like the ideas for the proposal is for um, changes to the fundamental structure of how we incentivize the system, and like also a couple different initiatives that I want to try and start as well,
Mm.
to try and provide more stability and liquidity to the economy,
Yeah.
because it's really hard for the economy to handle um, large volumes of commune being dumped, and like I recognize people have to pay the bills and whatnot, but like
Mm.
we've hitched our raft to this boat, and we're hoping it doesn't turn into the Titanic on us.
Okay, I mean, so you said that you're looking to break it down into a few multiple proposals as opposed to one big one, and there's a few changes you're probably making to some of the points. But is it still pertinent for us to sort of go through them one by one and get your thought process and
Well, yeah,
any
I wouldn't
ideas
mind
on them?
explaining them. I can just give
Hmm.
a quick like why and what's going on with it.
Yeah.
Um, just because like the a lot of them I'm gonna wind up pulling out just because like there's pushback on them from other
Okay.
developers in the community, and it's more like
Mm.
uh technical requirements or like why do we need that. So I don't mind addressing it as well. So I just like
Okay.
I when I pare it down, I'm gonna pare it down to something I know will pass because I can't burn 10 grand. So
Of course. Yeah, I mean that's the whole point of having discussions like this, is so that you can gauge sentiment and get an idea of what people are potentially worried about and what might cause pushback. But so the first point on the list for the agenda was the adjustment to the global incentive ratio. Presumably just for subnet 0, you wanted to make mining slightly more rewarding than validating on subnet 0.
yeah, because the
Is that?
validating.
Mhm. No,
Oh, I basically just want to like jumpstart the system a little bit.
mm,
I don't think it requires a very large change, and I think really large changes in percentage in that will like quite dramatically change the overall incentive structure. Uh, but with a little bit of a tip towards mining, then that will um, incentivize stake to move off of the really big validators and have people try to start up mining ops and stuff. And since it's a proof of stake model for mining, like it's not too hard to set up mining ops. So then we can do things like mining as a service or like single click miners and stuff. So there's
mm.
like a couple other different avenues of being able to bring external wealth into the community as well. So
Okay, and I mean, I guess it also has like the secondary benefit potentially of skewing things away from subnet 0 a little bit more and towards stake actually wanting to being moved to the subnets because of the emissions.
exactly, and then like having
Mm.
yeah, just generally decentralizing it more. Because like
Okay.
we have like this weird quasi centralized decentralized system, and if we want to do the decentralized thing, I think it would make more sense to have it more decentralized.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I can understand that. And so realistically, like the main purpose of that is the health of the total protocol and moving things onto actual projects that are developing as opposed to subnet 0, where as of right now, obviously there isn't anything specifically on top of subnet 0 as its unique own subnet that doesn't have to follow consensus, that the community are
Yeah,
pushing towards. So
as
that
of right
development
now.
could be moved onto actual subnets which are developing things in the immediacy.
Well, and also just developing on subnet 0 as well. Like the module system that was originally conceived by FAM
Mm,
for this whole project is like quite brilliant, but we aren't taking advantage of it. And so um the miners, as they like the modules would be the miners, that they effectively um you could support them by like staking in the same manner as you did before. But
mm,
like it actually, like there would be competition just to have a slot, never mind to uh like it's really hard to get people to move their money off of the validators and stake to a project.
mm,
And that's partly because tooling is not very web 2 friendly, and like people who are not super technically savvy basically can't use large portions of the network.
mm-hmm.
So making sure that we have good user interfaces and stuff like that for people is also another priority of mine. um, but
Okay.
yeah, I sort of lost where I was answering that question.
No, no, it's okay. Do you worry that there's a potential that having the incentives to be on Subnet Zero be lower could potentially kill the possibility of opening Subnet Zero up to have projects that can't be properly validated via the subnet and NUMA consensus systems from actually starting up?
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to have like the center. So one of the parts of the proposal is having like a DAO registrar.
Mm,
So effectively, mining would be limited. So like, what this is like my ideal like thought process. And
okay.
like honestly, I've never done any of this tokenomics stuff before. So if I'm saying crazy stuff, like just tell me. Um, but the idea that I had is that like you have a DAO registrar, miners come in like groups, so like you get like a group of 10 or 20 or something like that, and then but you
Mm,
have to run a validator with your miner. Your validator is not allowed to vote for your own miners. You can only vote for the other ones, and it has to vote for at least like I don't know, like half the network or something like that. Just because like the stake to voting ratio is kind of wonky, so like you can't make it vote for everything, but it like
mm-hmm.
should like vote on a rotating basis so that everyone gets fairly, so we don't get like large networks of people just voting self-voting, which will
Okay.
probably still happen anyway, but like I'm not sure how to prevent that.
Uh,
um
Hey, sorry to interrupt the
Hang on,
discussion.
man.
Hey guys, good to join here. So
I just want to say that the self-voting is actually prevented. Like with the global stake update, there's 51%, up to 51% network safety. You know, like it's as safe as proof of stake afterwards. We're effectively solving all self-voting on the UMA subnets. Like there's no self-voting after the global stake update, as long as majority of network stays honest. Like majority of network stake, which is pretty reliable. It's
How does that work exactly? Because I didn't understand that from the docs. So
yeah, it's mathematically impossible if the weight like in the consensus doesn't exceed majority agreement or like isn't within the consensus, which is majority agreement, then like I can share with all of you Python implementation of the consensus that's currently running, but you need like majority stake agreement for the weight to be valid. Otherwise, you're cut out of the consensus. It's actually pretty simple.
But is that
so then so how is that like that those sets of weights like sort of agreed upon? Like there's 8,000 modules on the subnet. It's what, $20 per module that you have to have staked to your miner or validator to be able to actually enact a vote. So you need like quite a lot of money. What about for smaller validators and how does that work for them? Like
Okay.
if I literally can't vote for the entire set of weights for the entire network, like how is that broken up, and like can you vote in sections, or like are you just totally screwed if you can't vote for the whole thing?
What do you mean by voting for the whole thing?
I think there might
There's
have been a miscommunication here a little bit. So we were specifically talking about subnet 0, and Hansa, I think you're talking about across the UMA subnets, right?
Yeah. I'm talking specifically across UMA subnets. Of course, subnet 0, since it has no consensus, it's kind of vulnerable to this kind of self-voting behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay,
that's what Bako's proposal is, sort of targeting, like almost purely subnet 0. So
Oh, I
it's
see.
not, yeah, it's not really designed to have, I believe, much, if any, impact on the subnets
yeah.
themselves.
I don't really want to touch the subnets because it's not really my wheelhouse.
Mm.
I mean, subnet 0 is technically not my wheelhouse either. I just want to try and keep money from bleeding out of the economy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the positive thing about the global stake update is that once it comes to play, we can literally, like right now, I think that subnet 0 is about 33% of the network's emission. After we have the global stake, it can be pretty much like near zero before
Oh,
we.
because the validators will decide the emission
Yeah,
amount to 0.
yeah,
That makes
yeah.
sense.
So we gain time by doing that move, and we like that's why we're prioritizing the update, because if we solve subnet 0 now, then okay, we solved subnet 0, but we're still in like an unscalable situation where the subnet allocation is not really that great. But if we get the global stake update and then we shift the consensus into distributing the subnet emission in a more effective way, then we gain time to basically work on subnet 0, and it's going to be much more effective approach to solving this.
Yeah, so we're, in a
I
way,
think
we're sort of already getting a head start, right? Like Bako's
Yeah.
proposal is sort of getting a little bit of a head start on, once the global stake comes in, we already have sort of like this good established foundation of ideas that we can already start working on.
Yeah, I would really like for this proposal to be submitted after maybe a week or 2 weeks of running the global stake, because it will kind of set the perspective for everyone how Commune will
yeah,
work
you
like in the
won't be able to
future.
tell until it's there,
Mhm.
and I'm fine with that. Like my initial plan with this was to try to get it like done quickly, but I didn't wind up getting a lot of traction, so it's sort of been sitting on the back burner for a bit. So it does make sense to, like, at least in an empirical sense, test out what the changes are like, and then see how that affects it, and then modify the proposal
Yeah,
accordingly as well.
yeah,
But I mean,
absolutely.
we can continue going through the sort of the points and get like a preliminary perspective and see whether or not there's any areas where we can already
Yeah, because I
see that
still
there
think
might be a gap.
I would advocate for some proof of stake emissions being allowed on subnet 0 because of um the function of the perverse incentive of greed to get the money that will lock money into the economy and then provide more stability, I think is still worthwhile.
I mean, there's
Yes.
also the benefit of if emissions to subnet zero end up going to zero, then the treasury will sort of have been finite and it will end, right? So there'd need to be something else put in place. So I definitely think that there will likely be emissions still flowing towards subnet zero, but that to what extent and what those mean and where those are placed, I guess is still to be known. But we were talking
Yeah.
about the validator miner pair, Bako. So you had the idea of making everybody who wanted to mine forced to run a validator as well, so they're contributing to both portions of the incentive
Yeah,
system,
and
right?
like so like I said, this is like my dream sort of like this would be a great way to get it working. I know that there's like technical requirements and like also just like burden of like having to do it.
Mm,
But like if we had that as a requirement to be able to mine, then we have a validator have to run a node for the network. So uh, that does a couple things. The first thing it does is that it reinforces the network. So we have
mhm,
occasional outages and like sometimes bottlenecks on transactions that slow things down. And
mm,
one of the reasons for that is because we have we literally have no incentive for anybody else to run nodes. And so Commune X has been doing really good work on that and like making sure that the network stays up.
mm,
And there's a few other independent people that are running their own nodes, but for like the vast majority of it, it's all run sort of centrally by Commune X, and they're the ones who have to burden the cost of that. It's not cheap running servers on the cloud. So like being able to have like the emissions that you get from mining be tied to having to run a node is useful in my opinion. And
okay.
then yeah, so yeah, go ahead.
So how where does that work in terms of could you not just hook your miner up to somebody else's validator? Would you necessarily actually have to run your own?
Well, that's why I wanted to have the DAO, like some kind of a DAO registrar. So like you have to submit your application for mining, and it would be like basically an automated process, but
Mm,
it would just like you have to register the keys that are going to be validated by the validator. Those are added to the whitelist, and then only those ones get voted on by the other validators. And then as long as you I still haven't figured out a good way to prevent because like it is susceptible to the self-voting problem because like if networks of people vote for the minimum amount of weights that you have to vote for, but they always vote for themselves, like
yeah.
that's kind of an issue. Maybe having like some kind of a rotating system where you're not allowed voting for the same weights uh, multiple times or something like that. But all things that I'm open to discuss. Like these are all like open talking points. Like I'm not trying to like pass anything right now.
You know, I mean, I think it's good to sort of air it out because I think there is a potential for some kind of centralized validation system on subnet zero, right? In as opposed to maybe forcing people to run validator miner pairs, but having some kind of centralized validation system that may or may not end up funded by the treasury, for example, or something, so that it's not an individual group that's fronting the cost.
Yeah, and then also uh like the validators and stuff like we it would be provided by the DAO as like a service, like they keeping them up to date and functioning correctly so that like when you download code it just works like that.
Hmm.
Like one of the problems with having independent repos that are open source is like not everybody's super great at keeping well documented open source repos and maintaining them, which is fair because it's like it's an extra cost and it's a lot of work. And so like often you'll pull down a repo and try to run something and it just doesn't run. So like having that as part of the functionality of that would be useful too. Um,
Yeah, I can see that. Okay. So we kind of covered requiring miners to run their own validators and the DAO registrar a little bit, but was there anything else you wanted to mention realistically when it came to like the DAO registrar?
yeah, so like the DAO register, I would want to set it up so that it basically pooled the capital that it got and then would use that capital to um, like fund the bridge or fund a new bridge that was like actually community owned and
Mm,
completely decentralized. I know Communex is working on something right now, but like currently we have two bridges out of the economy and both of them are owned by the same people. And while they've done really good work at making sure that we can like use their services and stuff, like it's just like the opportunities for people to we're giving large number of opportunities for people to do things like rug the economy, when we don't necessarily have to. But we need to have like some community initiative or like some incentive program to have people contribute funds to go to a new liquidity pool for a bridge, because people aren't just going to do it altruistically, and we can open up new
Mm.
bridges, but then the same incentives are in place for why they're doing it because they want to make a bag, right?
Okay, yeah, I can sort of understand that. So then moving on to one of the more contentious points, I think, for some people was the implementation of some kind of penalty or punishment for bad actors within the community.
Yeah, so that was more just me being pissed off at things, but also like I don't know, empowering the ability. Like it's just like it's such a hard thing because like there needs to be like some kind of ability to punish people for doing things that are like wildly outside of the system, and like
Mm.
for finding loopholes that are in the system and um abusing them. And one of the best ways to do that is to get rid of the stake that they have. And like the only problem is there's no real good mechanism for it, because like are we going to leave it up to the group of people that have keys because we were arbitrarily chosen, I think. We were going to start holding elections to have that. Like there's a lot of problems with that. So like yeah, it's contentious. I put it in there to see. Well, I was mostly pissed off about like what is that, subnet 24 or whatever, market compass is subnet, just
Mm.
because like they're not breaking any rules, but like they're not breaking any rules, but they are um like not they're they're not acting in as like good community stewards of people that have um large amounts of funds. So it
Okay,
like
I mean, do you think that the validation, so the new global stake validation, is going to be enough control that the community is going to have collectively to be able to decide emissions towards specific subnets
well,
to like
effectively
prevent them?
we're gonna wind up slashing their emissions. So it's same but different, I guess.
Yeah, but it's
Um
done. I mean, like the Diane has just said, it has to be baked in at the protocol level ideally. So the global stake model is actually a protocol level way of controlling emissions towards bad actors, right?
Yeah, and I mean, ideally, you have global protocols that you have set up that work perfectly, and then you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. Um,
Um,
so
yep.
effectively, basically, yeah, I think that it would be cool, not cool, it would be um, a good deterrent to be able to have a system like that in place, but I don't know how that looks or what that looks like, and I honestly, like that would be the first thing I pull out of this. So,
Mm. Go on, Hensler. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Can we go back to the to like mm, first three things that Bako mentioned about the protocol changes that he would like to do that I fully didn't like understand. So
Mhm.
you said the establish of a DAO register. Then you said that miner needs to run a validator, and then you said that like on top of that you need to run a local node basically. So is this for the whole network or only subnet 0 or
Yeah, so it would be only to earn the proof of stake mining on subnet 0. Um,
okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, that changes the whole thing because if you would have to so I guess I would first speak on the on running the local node. So the way the blockchain is designed is that there's a hook that's running first. That's called initialize. That's the hook being run by all nodes collectively, especially the validator nodes that redistributes the emission, runs all of the subnet calculations, and then there's something called the extrinsics, which is processed by the API nodes individually, which is something like transfer, stake, unstake, and so on. So what I see this doing would be that basically users that I mean what's like I don't see that much of an advantage like in running a local node because you're just gonna gain like one user, basically the guy that's spinning it up, if it's not somehow like put into the node list that all users can use.
That's what the whitelist is for the DAO registry, is that it adds it to the boot list, and then so when you spin up your validator to run your miners, then it won't basically the system won't accept your weights until your validator is like online and working. I mean your node is online and working, and then it would actually be part of the network, like it would be on the boot node list.
Boot node list. Well, I actually I think that this is like a bit too much of an headache to implement from the perspective of what we gain from this, because if someone is experiencing slow transaction time or the nodes are filled in transactions, like that's essentially their problem, you know. And I haven't been experiencing this problem. For example, like we are implementing like load balancing. We've just implemented a lot of DDoS protection for the nodes and so on, so they are like high quality. And if someone is experiencing problems with the node time, like that's essentially their problem, because I don't feel like this would strengthen the network really. I don't feel like the nodes are problem currently for anyone. I haven't seen many comments on this. I think that this would like add extra complexity to the whole system. You know, nodes going down. You always have to validate that someone's node is working, and I think that it would just cause a lot of confusion on and not be solving issue that we're actually having. So, but
I mean, I like that. Fair enough. I can. It definitely does add complexity to it. I was thinking of it more as a like a relief for you guys from having to run everything yourselves, but also it's like the the whole point of these blockchains kind of is that everyone runs their own like little instance of it or whatever. And like one of the other things that I have is like you haven't experienced it, but I've definitely experienced like times where the blockchain just doesn't work for like a day. And then like none of the sites, like the Comstats or whatever, like none of them are updating. There's no information. I can pull the chain directly for some nodes that are still active, but I have to like remove things. Like I can't like right now the boot list that comes with Commune X, node number 1 just flat out does not work. So I have to like delete that from the list, and then I'm able to like use the ComX utility normally. I'm not sure. So
So what do you mean by the blockchain not working for a day? Do you mean API node not working, or
yeah. So the chain is still running, but the API is just not functioning correctly. People can't pull for information and stuff.
I mean, we have about like 31 API nodes. It's possible that there's going to be some outage or like downtime because, for example,
No, you just cut out there.
and it took some of the nodes down until we figured out that someone is attacking it. But again, like this is a problem of the user. Like it's his thing that he relies on the public architecture. If he wants to if someone is running like a service like Comstats or Comswap or anything else, they should definitely spin up their node. Like it's very easy. But we don't guarantee that these nodes will work at all times. Like if it's inconvenient for some users, they can always spin up their nodes. I really don't think that this would help the network too much to require every user to do it, because
Not every user, just users that want to just for sets of miners, but like
yeah,
and just for the subnet sake. But I mean, fair enough. If it's too much of a technical hurdle, then I can understand that. And
yeah.
especially if it's not really adding any value, I can also see that. I do think that like reinforcing public infrastructure does have merit, even if it's even if the stance that we have right now is like, oh, we don't guarantee it. Like, it would be cool if we could.
Well, absolutely. We can modify Commune X to encourage users to run their local nodes like more actively. But yeah, I mean, we just had like, I think it was with the governance update where we updated the node dependencies for our blockchain. So like running the node, if you have Docker, it's literally just one command right now because the node carries all of the data. It's extremely easy to set up. So but the other part of the proposal for the DAO register and miner running a validator, that would be only for subnet 0, right?
Yeah, just for subnet 0. Basically,
Okay.
as a way to like validate, have validators without having to have like somebody in charge of it or whatever. So then it's just like decentralized validation.
Yeah. Then I think it's a more interesting idea than for the whole network, and it's going to be quite. That's why I said that we should wait for the global stake update with this, because if you're going to be a validator, regardless of what subnet it is, like you have to validate everywhere if you want to maximize your APR. So we'll probably have to redefine the whole structure of subnet 0 validation when the global update comes, global stake comes, because what would happen is that if you have a validator that's whitelisted for subnet 0 and we enforce the whitelist, then you would have potentially higher APR than all of the other subnets. So
Oh, I did not know that.
yeah, so because you can validate on a subnet that no one else can, hence you're getting a little bit more emission, which would like cause a monopoly to the validators that on subnet.
So like basically sort of the idea of this proposal, and I'm not sure, actually it's good that I can ask you directly. The APY, can we change that APY? Because like effectively APY is a proof of stake model as it is right now. It's just it incentivizes large pools of like single validators that have like massive amounts of money on them. Basically what I want to kind of do is like swap it on subnet 0 so that APY is the proof of stake for miners instead. What are your thoughts on the technicalities of that, and if that's possible, or if I'm like wild and out of my mind?
I would say that I mean, are we thinking here in terms of the current local stake model, or potentially after the global stake update?
Yeah, I wouldn't. It doesn't make sense to make any kind of proposals for anything right now until the global stake comes out. So it would be after the evaluation of the global stake, and then whatever is working at that point.
Yeah. So my yeah. I would say that we would talk about this after the global stake, because it's going to be more clear how the validation landscape will look like. And as for handling of subnet 0, so we know that rootnet is going to become the current subnet 0, and that there's actually something that wasn't mentioned on the proposal. It makes
You dropped out again.
a subnet that's
you dropped out again. We heard there's something that wasn't mentioned on the subnet proposal, and then you
oh
disappeared.
sorry, I have a shitty connection. So there's something that wasn't mentioned in the global stake proposal, but it's not directly going outside of the constraints of it, because it's not modifying pretty much any logic. Like anyone could actually do this even without our chain modification. That is that well, technically could do it, but they would need to swap out the founder. But what we want to do is register subnet, which founder is the treasury address, and it has a founder fee of 100%. So what that means is that we will have a subnet which emission are 100% allocated to the treasury. And as for the subnet 0, which is going to be the rootnet, we're going to be recycling all of its emissions. So basically, you have two subnets with the global stake. One that's recycling emission if they are allocated to it, and one that is 100% allocating to the treasury. So the rootnet and the, let's say, like a validator DAO on the rootnet can make decisions whether it makes sense to, for example, recycle the emissions because there's something wrong with the network, or we need to fund more of the treasury so they can, for example, allocate 20% of the network emission to the treasury. And so there's the subnet 0 is going to become subnet 2. Rootnet is going to become subnet 0, and this treasury subnet is going to become subnet 1. And as for the subnet 0, like that's how we got there. I kind of went off the rails. Is that for the current subnet 0, the linear consensus, right when the global stake update takes place, we aim to encourage all validators to basically deallocate the emissions from there. So it will be kind of a transitioning period where we figure out what are the best steps to take with the current subnet 0. So sorry if that's been a bit confusing. I've added the information about the emission handling, but my point was that we kind of don't have to worry about the subnet 0 that much after the global update, because we're gonna have some time to figure out what to do with it.
So you're just shuffling around the subnets basically. So subnet 0 becomes subnet 1, and then and then that treasury subnet becomes subnet 2, and then the rootnet is the subnet 0, right?
Yeah, I'll probably repeat it because I went a bit chaotic there. So subnet 0 is subnet with no consensus. That one is going to be shifted to subnet 2. Then we're going to have a subnet that's working for pricing purposes, which is the rootnet. That's going to become subnet 0. And then there's going to be a new subnet, which is allocating 100% of its rewards to the treasury, and that's going to become subnet 1. So we effectively have three subnets that don't work for mining or validation in the traditional sense, same as the UMA subnets do. So subnet 0 pricing, subnet 1 fully allocated to treasury.
You're basically hijacking the emissions from subnet 0 for now, while we figure out the model.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
my point was that we can take the current emission from subnet 0 and allocate it either to recycling purposes or the treasury. So we're going to gain time to figure out what to do with a 0.
Okay. Well, we should talk about what to. I think if we're gonna do that anyway, like we should make a capital pool for us for funding a bridge or something. But anyway, we can talk about that and make proposals. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that change was coming.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, we didn't include the treasury proposal in the or the information about the treasury subnet in the proposal, because technically anyone can do this. Like anyone, if there's just a little bit of tweak, they can register subnet, which founder will be the treasury address, and set the fee to 200%. It's like something that the protocol would essentially allow you to do even as of
How
right
would you
now.
reallocate the emissions?
Well, the pricing mechanism of the rootnet will do that.
Okay.
It's a bit of a less devy question, but what would happen to net UIDs in this case?
There will be a storage migration, which means that the code itself will handle the moving of subnets. So the net UIDs, if there's anything standing in the way of subnet 1 and subnet 2, which there are, which is Zangief and Comchat, they'll be moved into the next 3 slots. So, but we will release like I guess changelog of all of the changes that are going to take place. But
Okay.
yeah, there's going to be moving of like 3 UIDs or net UIDs.
Okay, and there won't be
So
any issue with like the stake following them as they're moved because nothing will actually be moving, right?
no, we've actually been doing a lot of these storage migrations in the past where
Mm-hmm.
storage is moved, even the stake storage moved, and no one essentially realized. So it's something that we're familiar with.
Oh, okay. I mean, that
It's
sounds really,
basically
really
just like
interesting.
it's like a database migration. It's just match tables, columns and rows to table columns and rows from point A to point B and transfer the information.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next point, I don't think we've covered this yet, which was like the hybrid proof of stake, proof of work that you wanted to suggest, Bako.
Yeah, so that's just more we kind of have but it's more the I don't want to have this proposal affect the subnets and like their emissions. I wanted it basically just for the rootnet. And then so
Okay.
that makes it that would make it like a hybrid because like on the rootnet you could do the proof of stake and then get your emissions that way if you like, or if you wanted to go participate in one of the other economies, then we would be able to do that as well.
So is this going to change now with sort of like the reveal that there's going to be subnets 0, 1, and 2 that aren't going to accept traditional mining and validation?
Yeah, it basically just throws this whole thing out the window. Um, so I'll have to like assess how everything's working after, and then rework any parts of the proposal that I think are salvageable.
Mhm.
I still think that like I'll still advocate that like at least some of those emissions that wind up getting reallocated from old subnet 0, it would still make sense to still have some kind of a proof of stake incentive so that we can lock more money into the economy, because like that full having that floor continuously creep up from people trying to get one up over the lowest miner, um
Mhm.
it will continuously increase the cost until eventually like it will be fairly expensive to mine, and unfortunately that does make it like less accessible to people. But
Mhm.
fundamentally for the economy, I think it's better because um, the locking that much liquidity up in the protocol, or like in the subnets themselves, is a nice sink for the economy. Because like you got to think of this like imagine that we have a like a World of Warcraft kind of video game or whatever. We have an economy. We have basically hyper like continuous inflation all the time. So like
Mm.
the way that they manage that in their games is they have sinks for the economy. So every time you travel, it costs money. Every time you buy some or repair something at the store, it costs money.
Mhm.
And that money doesn't go anywhere. It literally gets burned. So like we need some kind of similar mechanic for Commune to be able to manage the hyperinflation if without because if especially if we are not able to manage the allocation of those resources, because if they're not going towards development of the service itself, it is just bleeding everybody dry. So
Okay, and your suggestion there is sort of just ever increasing in competitiveness, but also cost of registration.
yeah, it becomes a sink for the economy. Also, transaction fees are another really good one for that. That one's
Mhm.
already in place. Like we could increase those. I don't really want to increase those because then it also becomes like I hate being on Ethereum mainnet because it's just like every time I do something, it costs me like $20.
Mhm.
But like there's a reason for that. So
Yeah.
As for the transaction fees, they haven't actually been essentially possible because there was lack of proper benchmarking on the blockchain, which we have done. So we can enable transaction fees like that are dependent on the amount of work that the transaction is actually doing in the node. So uh,
oh,
we
cool.
could
Sounds
do
fun.
that. Yeah.
Cool.
We have that on all.
Cut out again. Well, that's cool that it is possible.
Mhm. Yeah, no, definitely.
I'll have to think about a proposal for that one.
Mm.
I just want to make sure that it's not like prohibitively expensive, because it's just like it's not we want to try and keep things as open and fluid as possible and
Mhm.
easily accessible as possible. The problem with a lot of these mechanisms is that they are inherently it inherently makes it about having more money. But the whole system is based on money, and having more money is kind of like the one way that you game the system regardless. So it's kind of, I'm not sure how to get around it. I'm trying to think of ways, but if anybody has ideas, let me know.
So I was gonna skip past point 8, which was the community development fund from the DAO Treasury, because that's kind of already.
Basically, I just want the DAO to actually start doing that.
Yeah, I mean, finding some way to make use of the treasury funds, it stacking up for now isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as when it actually does get put into action, it's put into action for something good and useful.
Yeah, that's effectively what it is. Yeah.
But I think after global stake sort of comes through, there's going to be a lot more room for people to actually have or provide services that aren't necessarily validatable. But then another one of sort of the contentious points, similar to the slashing or the penalty, is the establishment of an emission cap on validators.
Did I put emissions cap? Oh shit. Yeah,
You
that's
were
not.
suggesting for an emission cap of 10 million
No,
for
I meant a
validators.
stake cap, not a mission cap. I can see
Ah,
why that would
I
be
mean,
contentious.
they're relatively similar, I guess, because one is
It's
directly
just
is a direct correlation to the other.
putting it at like 10 million makes it so that all but like one or two of the largest validators would have to move like a bit of their stake off of it. I don't want to like do what we did before where fam just like put in like, what was it, $1 million or something. Like that was a pain in the ass, although I did get a fair amount of money from like having validators like thinking up and down as they hit the cap, and then people would jump off, and then I had like this whole system going. But uh it's basically it's just to try to stop like large pools of capital. But like at the end of the day, if the mining system is set up, then it doesn't really it will automatically do that anyway. So like this point can totally be pulled from it. So
Okay, and I mean, you've put in like a raw number, but I presume that the intention was like a percentage of global stake as opposed to an actual raw specific
no,
number.
I like hard numbers better than I like
Oh.
percentage of global stake, because global stake emissions are continuously rising. So like last time I did the calculation, I think it was 2 months. Um if and I know that this is being addressed, and there will be a change to it, but like the subnet funding requirements they grow by a large amount every day, and currently our subnet emissions are not enough to cover that. So I think the last time I did the calculation, we had about 2.5 months before the subnet emissions, like that's assuming we save all of the money that is produced on the subnet, including the miners. We have about 2 months before our subnet would get deregistered, because we would fall below the emissions requirement. So like having it tied to the percentage of the economy is like, it's really inflationary and like very.
Okay.
0.40. Getting back.
What's that?
I think they were having another conversation.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
So yeah, so basically, I'm way more in favor of hard numbers. So having it set as a hard number, and also like the like $10 million on a validator is a lot of money. So like it's not like it affects like the whole population or anything. It's just a couple large validators, and that's there's no like, it's just to try to stop like centralized power, but then you still run into the same problem of like, well, they just have like 3 validators now, and they all have like 5 million, and then you still have the same problem. So it kind of doesn't really solve the issue. So
I mean,
it's if it's contentious at all, I'm fine pulling it.
I think from an optics point of view, if there is like a specific group that has like a bunch of validators at maximum capacity, then there's obviously I think that's generally going to become evident. So the hope would be that the network would realize, and then people would act. If they didn't approve, they'd act in a way against it, and if they did approve, obviously they'd continue to support them as they had been. So I guess there is
Yeah,
still a potential
it's just like
benefit.
making it a little inconvenient as the main thing, but like
Potentially, yeah. Okay, but the emissions cap is sort of just like, you're not so keen on it.
I miswrote. I didn't mean to put emissions there. Definitely not emissions. I'm letting the validation system handle all the emissions, except the only thing I wanted here was just like even like a really simple calculation that just takes how much stake do you have, on subnet 0 on your miner, and then like
Mhm.
it gives you an emission based on that. And scale that with the rest of the network, and then whoever has the most gets the most, and whoever has the least gets the least. Very
Okay.
simple.
No, that's fair enough. And so the final point that you sort of touch upon is establishment of a community liquidity pool.
Yeah, so I really want uh to find ways to get effectively a large pool of capital together, because there's a couple things that we can do with that. First of all, it gives us levers on the economy which we don't have. So like in fiat world, the Fed has like inflation rates and like other things that they can adjust in order to change the trajectory of the economy, and if things are being too inflationary or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't really have mechanics like that, and the only way to really get those mechanics is to work cooperatively. And I love consensus, but like, goddamn, is it ever bad at doing things quickly? Um,
Well,
so like having a large pool of capital that's controlled by like the community, and can like more rapidly be able to coordinate to do stuff like, um if there's another really bad liquidity crunch. I've noticed the price came up again today, which is nice. But if it like, we can do things like stake the economy, or like buy USDC to like prop up the bridge, or um like, yeah, there's a number of different things that you can do if there's a large pool of capital that you can have access to, and if we can just like allocate a portion of the emissions towards that, I think that would be very useful as well. And then also just to build a bridge, like we can use it to stake to a bridge and then buy wrapped Ethereum, and then we have a bridge out that isn't controlled by any one entity. And then that would be cool too.
is there a significant difference between this community liquidity pool and the DAO treasury?
uh just that it's specifically not about spending the money, it's about keeping the money.
Okay, I mean, but could the same thing sort of just be done with a portion of what the treasury gains
Yeah, totally. If
would
we wanted
be?
to co-op
Mhm.
the DAO to do that for now, like that would work great, or like even in the future. And then like the main thing is just making sure that the DAO didn't spend all the money. Like,
Mhm.
even if it was spending it on good initiatives and projects, if we don't have that liquidity pool to have access to, then we lose all those levers to be able to pull.
Okay, but it would sort of just be like a subdivision of the DAOs in a way, I
Yeah,
suppose.
in a way, yeah.
Okay. No, I mean that's interesting enough. And obviously keeping things within the economy but circulating is definitely one of the best ways to help it grow. Because
Well,
idle
yeah,
money.
you need money moving around. So that's like one of the reasons why encouraging. So like one of the problems with fiat money is that people are incentivized to save it and
Hmm.
to sit on large pools of capital, and that's bad for the economy. The economy needs an ideal economy running with perfect market efficiency means that nobody keeps any money ever. Everybody spends
Yeah.
everything that they have.
Hmm.
And, I mean, well, that's not realistic for people because they need to make sure that they can cover costs on a rainy day or whatever. It is still better if you're going to rely on market mechanics to control a system. It is better to have it working closer to a complete free market system than it is to have restrictions and barriers and large pools of capital growing that could lock up the economy. Because um, if we keep going in the trajectory that we are now, like the economy will eventually seize up, and then like we won't be able to do anything at all, and it will be bad. So being able
Hmm.
to make sure that movement of funds is free flowing and
Yeah.
easily accessible.
I mean, there's a very famous saying which is idle hands are the miscreants' playground. And I guess it's a similar thing. Like idle money does nothing but sort of like fester, similar to a swamp, I
Well,
suppose.
yeah,
It
it's just
doesn't.
bad for the economy because like
Hmm.
investing it doesn't technically produce any wealth. So like you're creating wealth from nothing. Well, like, I mean, honestly, all this money is all just made up anyway. But the having uh, a non-productive large section of the economy that doesn't do anything productive but still earns money is parasitic on the economy.
Hmm. And it's imperative that I suppose we find ways to change that and have all of the money that's sort of sitting around and not actually helping a development get
Well,
put to some use. And
well
that's
either
similar to
that,
the
or
problem with subnet
we
zero.
have the incentives to like actually reinforce, like where we set it up, like the proposal to have global stake on I mean, sorry, uh proof of stake on subnet 0 would be like you're structuring it so that the pools of capital that do appear, and that people will not, because people are still going to do it anyway. Like they're gonna like there's going to be investors that come put like 100 grand in and then like don't do anything and like leave it for a year. But making sure that we can put that to work for us, and incentivize this, or set the system up to incentivize people to move it around as much as possible, I think is better.
Yeah, no, I can agree. I think most people would agree that people doing things with their Commune is a lot better than them just sitting on it and accruing.
Yeah, and what's not in this proposal is we need to have consumers of the network. Like we need to, we need a product to sell people. we got to start selling something.
I mean, I presume that's sort of like the next step on the majority of developers' timelines.
Yeah, we have some stuff in the works. Nothing really ready to share like right this moment, but like definitely like our vector store, we've finished the front end on that now, so we actually have like a chat interface and stuff. So that should be coming down the pipe soon. And then just like having like a mining dashboard that's easy to like monitor your miners and stuff is another thing we're working on. So like having good user interfaces, I think is it kind of like annoys me, but like it's always been true, regardless of what sector of the tech economy you're in. But the user interfaces are more important than the product most of the time.
No, yeah, I can get behind that. I can understand that. But I don't know if anybody else has anything that they want to talk about or any other suggestions when it comes to sort of like post global stake being implemented, or any other sort of like thoughts or considerations anybody has. Oh, did you have anything, fam? We can't hear you if so. I saw the mute unmute.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying.
There were issues with Discord earlier.
I am digging this avatar screen thing though. It moves when I talk. I'm a small child.
Is it something simple enough that you can type it, fam, or would you have to sort of like communicate it verbally, do you think? So what do you think of using quadratic stake, Bako?
So that is basically adjusting the stake so that the people who have the least amount of stake get the largest amounts of rewards. And I think I actually like that idea. I think that would actually be kind of cool. I haven't really considered it because I was just trying to think of like what's the easiest and quickest implementation of this that we could do, and like just literally having a calculation that just like evaluates and scales it based on how much they have is like super simple to implement. But it's not that much harder to do quadratic stake either, and I think that actually is not bad, because then that really incentivizes people to break up the large pools of capital. And because if you have, the more money you have, the less like APY effectively you'd be getting. It would be like some form of an incentive emission, but not actually APY, but you can think of it like APY. And that would mean that like if you ran lots of miners with a little bit of stake, you'd get more money than one miner with a lot of stake. So I think that's a good idea.
I think that primarily validators, but I think that quadratic stake, like it's a matter of consensus. Like maybe on the subnet zero, like in some sense, but you know, if we would have global stake, we would have to apply it globally, and I think that would result in like not good things at all. Like I don't think it would be solving anything, because we're solving self voting with like a UMA consensus on all of those subnets, like except the current S0, and I think it would just result in like a big time chaos. To be honest, like you would have just a lot of unnecessary validators.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you would have to do it globally. Maybe,
Well,
yeah.
Would you have to do it globally? Because like, couldn't you just do it for like have Like basically its own
yeah,
UMA for like subnet 0.
yeah. You could make like a subnet consensus that would apply that logic for the emission distribution. I think that once we have custom subnet consensus, that it actually makes sense to like try to experiment with this. But applying it globally to the stake, that's not a good idea at all. But if you do it for like a subnet consensus, then I think it would be interesting to experiment with how that would work. But yeah.
Eden could do that.
Yes, but we will need to wait for custom subnet consensus to.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Because I think we'd be a good testing ground of it. Because like we're the biggest subnet because we have a really high cap, and then like it's pretty easy to mine on it. So like, if something wonky happens and some people get knocked off, they're not going to be like super pissed off about it.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned that you're going to be doing some updates to your subnet, right?
Yeah. So we have a chat interface. So our subnet will be doing we also, I haven't done the implementation for it yet, but I also do want to do like knowledge stores so that agents can access them for like specialized knowledge like as an application for the embeddings that we're just sort of creating for no reason right now. But what we're going to do in the next little bit here is we're going to we're updating our validator, so it's like a modular validator, and the validator will be able to effectively take a plugin, and that plugin will be just the instructions on how to vote for other subnets, and so that we can easily vote for multiple subnets when that change arises. That'll be open source, and any other subnets welcome to use it. So then theoretically we can just keep like a central store of the subnet validations, and then it'll be a lot easier for everybody to validate for everybody. And then the other thing that we're going to be doing is launching our the chat interface, which I can actually show you.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to be like this. It'll probably be like more stuff to it, but it's effectively just like a document uploader. It's not like super complicated or anything. But oh, it didn't work. Damn it. Well, something broke on it, but it will work when we release it. And then the documents, basically you can use them. The network will make a request to the embedding miners, and then convert those documents into embeddings, and then we'll have like data stores as well. We need to figure out a way to like incentivize hosting that like a file storage, I guess. But that's kind of more long-term plans. And then use those knowledge stores to be able to like have access to this, and then try and like provide that as a service for people who want to do, because this has a whole API backend that has documentation and stuff for on how to interact with the API, and then you'll be able to you can write your own agents locally or use it in another application, or you can use the chat interface directly. And then that way we'll have access to basically like a very large knowledge base of retrieval augmented information for agents, and then theoretically there'll be like specialized data stores that you can use with your agents. So like say you want it to be an expert on C++ because you're writing something in C++, it'll have access to all that information, and then it will perform queries for you. And then also I want to script the agent so that it will do document compression and sentiment analysis, so you can upload like meeting minutes and stuff and have it like tell you what are the key takeaways, and like what are the like what was the like how was what was the sentiment of the meeting, and all these different kinds of things. So like it would be a good product for companies that are looking for a really simple implementation of effectively like a knowledge base for their company. So like lots of companies have like standard operating procedures, lots of HR stuff, lots of the boring stuff that people don't want to sit around reading all that information. this is really good for being able to access it and retrieve that information very quickly. And yeah, so
Mhm.
but yeah, that's what I got. So
Yeah,
that's coming down the pipe too.
Yeah, awesome. You also mentioned that you're going to be modifying the validation because there's been some problem with it resulting in like unwanted miners getting emission, right?
Yeah, so right now there's like a base emission that you get for as like the starting point for the calculation. But I'm not zeroing it out when miners are not providing work. And while they're all getting hit, not all of them are getting approved. So that should be probably done later on today or tomorrow. We'll make that change. And so you'll actually have to make sure that you produce embeddings. So if you've been riding that wave, then I hope you had a good ride because it'll be turned off.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
But no, I think that's more or less everything to do with the proposal and whatnot. We got some really, really good insights when it comes to what potentially might be on the table for post-global stake implementation. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Baka, for coming on and explaining everything and answering anybody's questions. And thank you, everybody else, for showing up and engaging and taking part and help fuel this conversation.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, and then also thank you Hansa and everybody else for their questions. If you have any other ideas, thoughts, questions, or anything like that, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat about things. I'm a big nerd about this kind of stuff. Yeah, keep on working.
Yeah, no, thank you, everybody, for coming along. Have a wonderful
Awesome.
rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye.